How did your fundraising expectations compare against your fundraising reality?
I think in hindsight, it was a breeze. It was stressful in the period that we were doing it, but actually when I look back, a lot of things went our way. We were really lucky to meet such great investors. We raised from a VC, from Fuel, and honestly, I hope that more VCs are like them. They were so collaborative. It was a breeze to work with them. So I think looking back, pleasantly surprised in the process. Didn't take us too long, I think. What about you?
I think for us, we underestimated how long it would take us. Initially, we thought it would just be a breeze between 2 and 3 months.
Yeah.
It actually took us, was taking us almost 8 months to close our current round.
Right.
It took us 6 months to close our previous round.
Right.
The time frame is sometimes you underestimate that, but also you underestimate how many people you've got to meet. Because you're continuously kind of refining your pitch every time you go to an investor, because there's always something that they pick up on which you haven't thought about, and therefore you're constantly refining your pitch. You're changing your slide deck to kind of cater to all those different kind of questions.
Yeah.
So I think the time as well is also because you've got meetings, you've got aligned calendars, and you've got follow-up meetings, and so it's just I think in terms of the refinement of your pitch, as well as start to finish in terms of the close, it's a long process.
It's interesting because we have transversely opposite experiences. I think that's another thing that I think founders should bear in mind, is that there really isn't a guideline. Everything is different.
Yeah.
There are unique experiences for everybody. What drives your financial decisions?
What drives a financial decision is purely based on needs for the moment, but also at the same time, what we do is we have an annual plan and an annual budget that we've already prepared at the start of the year, which clearly specifies, how many staff we need, or how much we need to spend on tech, for instance, and it's all based on assumptions and line in the sand. But what we don't want to do is make knee-jerk reactions and say, let's say a teammate comes up and says, I've got far too much on my plate, we need to hire someone. So what we immediately look at that circumstance and we go, right, can we change the process? Can we make it more efficient? Or do we need to hire more people? But also at the same time, we look at the amount of work he or she has on her plate to say, how much effort is that? Because sometimes there could be inefficiencies in the process, just the way it's been done in the past. So we look at that and really look at, okay, if it's a 60-hour kind of gig, right, okay, it's way beyond the 40-hour mark, therefore we need to hire an additional person ahead of time, but certainly not the first, we don't do a knee-jerk hire because hiring is expensive.
We just raised, so that question is coming up a lot of how far can we really take this and stay small? And I think what drives our financial decisions right now is partly necessity, so partly we need to update our website. The one we have now is not up to standard. We need to increase our sales, so let's invest in our resources there. It's quite short-sighted, but I think that we all as a team kind of understand that if we are to grow our team out, we very much don't want to grow a team, hire people, and then in 6 months' time realise we can't afford them anymore and fire. I think the fire fast mentality is kind of not something that I would like to imbue in our business.
What money lessons did you learn from your parents?
It's a very interesting question that I haven't probably put that much thought into. But planning is something that I'm not generally adept at, especially when it comes to my finances. So I think seeing them starting to be a lot more thoughtful about what their plans are and how they're going to sort of survive and thrive.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, from the start, there have been some values which, funnily enough, my wife and I share together. The things like we don't have a credit card.
Okay.
We've had credit cards in the past, but now we just don't own one because debt again is something that we've always been taught. Don't have debt unless if you can afford not to.
Yeah.
I have a mortgage, for instance, but
Yeah.
that obviously you can't afford a home. But so that's something that I stay clear of if I can. And then absolutely planning is it makes absolute sense. I used to have an Excel spreadsheet as I do for most things, but no longer. I think there's just macro level of planning in terms of what do we need immediately. Put some money away, whether it's 10% of your salary or 20% of your salary. So we try. I never used to save a lot in pension, but now I've started doing that now because the older you get, the trickier it gets, and it's good to start saving at some point.
It's interesting because I now that you sort of mention it, I started thinking more about the cultural aspect to your approach towards finances. So I grew up in a Middle Eastern family, and a lesson that I definitely haven't learned from them, which is something my parents both did, was they never lived beyond their means. They didn't have credit cards as far as I can remember. They earned and spent what they earned, and didn't have to spend it just because they wanted to keep up with the Joneses. Not a lesson I've learned. I definitely need to be better. How important is it for everyone in the company to have the same attitude towards spending?
You kind of build that culture where it's normal to go ask for 3 quotes and not go for the first quote. Then people realize the value of money, even if they've not learned that or done that in the past in their kind of personal life. And it's almost a given. And the way we do it is that for any activity or a project, we set a budget and say, okay, so if it's an office move, we say, here's a budget, try and do the things within that budget. And what that does is it makes people become innovative in where you source the furniture, because it's really easy to go and order all the new furniture from made.com because it's simple, right? Because it's convenient, you just go to the website and order. Whereas if you're forced to be innovative about it, so we still buy used furniture, we still visit British Heart Foundation's kind of used furniture shop. So for us, it's like that's what we should be doing as a young business. We should be really counting our pennies and be really careful about where that money goes, and invest in growth and technology rather than invest in fancy furniture.
I paid £500 to build my entire platform. That's how much it cost in total over the course of a year. And we had a huge impact on people's lives just with that tiny bootstrapped business. So everyone in the business knows that. That's our founding story, right? So the fact of the matter is, look how much we can do with so little. Having said that, our investors gave us money, and that money needs to be spent and invested to improve our business, to improve our tech, to grow. And so I think as long as people know that we can do so much with so little, and all it takes is some ingenuity and creativity.
Correct.
But you have money and you can spend it, as long as you can sort of show that you can provide value with that, spend it. That's fine. Can you ever over-raise for a business?
What it really comes down is what valuation your business is given by the investors and by the market. You could be given really high valuation and then end up raising a lot of money. But then I think what's interesting to note is that what are you going to do for the next round? When are you going to raise the next round? What's your route to exit? I think working backwards from that point and then to where you are right now and clearly mapping that out is really, really important. Is there a question of over-raising? I suppose when you raise a lot and you don't have a market, you don't have customers, then I suppose you could spend a lot on beer on tap and foosball tables.
Starts the W, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's called WeWork.
Exactly that.
A very good example of a business that just kind of snowballed into this disaster that I think in hindsight everyone saw coming, but definitely a business that overraised, definitely a business that was overconfident, that was high on its own supply. And you're right, I mean, valuation is one thing, but also, you know, what is the purpose that you're trying to achieve, and what are the things that you're using that money to create? In other words, do you need it to do what you want to do? In WeWork's example, just a bunch of hubris and a lot of investment in that business, hoping that almost like a Ponzi scheme, you know, good money after bad, essentially, to see how far they can inflate the thing. So yes, you can overraise for a business.
And with money comes expectations as well, right? I mean, investors at the end of the day, they need return on investment. So therefore, you can raise a lot of money today, but then you've got to show something for it at the end of a year, whatever milestones you've agreed to, whatever KPIs you've agreed to. If you're not hitting those KPIs and milestones, if you're not growing as fast, then at some point that tap is going to run dry. How did you connect with investors?
So when I realized we needed to raise, I sort of did one a month in advance, and it was just me, so I thought I need to save myself a lot of time. So I created an Excel spreadsheet of just basically all of the places I thought I would have a chance. And LinkedIn, finding the person, emailing people, getting rejected by pretty much every single person. But it's good because we ended up connecting with who we ended up raising with, and I couldn't be happier with who we found, really. I think the analogy I want to use, I suppose, is it's very similar to dating, in the sense that when it feels right, it just is easy, and you know, they want to sit in a room with you. They have great questions. You progress things quickly, in a sense that things are quite smooth. We were really lucky. I mean, we got a term sheet pretty quickly, and I think that was really a signal of how keen our investors were in the long run, which was really good. So picking who you're going to go out to is really important. Being quite well edited and not sending it out to everybody is a good plan. I made that mistake. You know, you get an email back and they'd say, well, we don't actually invest in seed rounds, so we only go from Series A and above, and you think, oh well, that was a waste of time. You know, I shouldn't have done that. So having a pruned list of where you're going to go and get funding, and then trying to go the sort of, don't use the application form on their website. You know, try and find who it is you want to speak to, and try and connect with them on LinkedIn or send them an email.
We were contacted by our first kind of angel investors because they were our customers. So we were quite lucky in the sense that they took our pitch deck apart, and they just pointed holes all over the place, which is quite brutal in the initial days. But actually what it did was it helped us refine the story from an investor's standpoint and not from our standpoint. I think our first pitch deck was all about, hey, this is what we've done, this is what we're about to do, and not much about what was in it for the investor. Because at the end of the day, an investor is only going to invest in the business because they're looking at ROI, and obviously they need to like you as founders, and they buy into the vision, but it still remains a business investment, and therefore ROI is quite important. So the first angel investors came through that part, but we also used an intermediary called Clearly So, who was essentially an impact investment bank broker. And so Clearly So have the angel side, and that's where we got a lead investor from. But we also pitched to a number of other angel syndicates. So I think our connection was, there was a lot of proactive outreach, but also some kind of inbound activity as well.
When raising, what do good terms look like for a founder, and how do you negotiate them?
Complicated question. I think it depends on who you're raising from. If it's an angel, then you go with fairly standard terms. For example, we use Seed Legals as our lawyers.
Yeah, we did too.
And they've got standard terms for most kind of standard shareholder agreement, articles, and so on. And therefore, if the angel is quite a relaxed angel, and most of our angels are, in fact, all of our angels are, then the process is quite painless. The larger institutional investors, they usually have their own, obviously, legal clauses to take care of, and so it gets slightly tricky. Now, it's a bit of a trust equation as well, in the sense that there's an element of trust, but it goes both ways. If these are long-term partners with you, then they would understand where you're coming from in terms of negotiation. Again, if you've got a lot of offers on the table, then that's great for negotiation. Because then you can say, right, so that is, I've been offered a better offer by investor B, for instance, and that makes your position quite favorable.
You have more leverage.
Exactly that. Whereas if you've got just the one offer, it's quite hard. So I think the best situation to be in is to have multiple term sheets on the table, but also remember that when you've raised funding before, your previous investors are going to have a say in the matter, because they need to protect their interests.
I think that's one thing that I realised very quickly when we got our term sheet, and I'm so lucky to have a COO that has gone through this before and could guide us, essentially, because my natural reaction, apart from excitement, was, as a novice, was how am I going to be okay through this? Is this going to be fair? Is it going to be lopsided?
Yeah.
Even looking at the term sheet, you kind of, as a novice, as a first timer, sometimes feel like that level of distrust of, I hope I'm not missing anything. But we have a COO, we have fantastic investors that made everything very, very fair. And I think, just like to your point about partnerships, that's what our COO said was, look, these are your partners, and that they wouldn't want to do something that would jeopardize your success.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that you are as successful as possible, and that means having terms that are fair.